I wanted to talk about this episode for so long. Like, all life just needs to stop the week after New York Comic Con so we can recover, because I've been so tired this whole week. But, like, we didn't talk about this episode. Louis getting face? Come on. And welcome to my safe haven, everybody. Thank you guys for joining me for a delayed review here on the Black Gay Comic Geek channel. But this is your first time checking me out. First and foremost, check out my reviews for episodes 1 and 2. But with that said, hey, how's it going? My name is Michael. I call myself the Black Gay Comic Geek, and I always say the things that I love to talk about on my channel has blood, sex, gore, and magic, or any variation of the four. So I like to talk about superheroes. I like to talk about comic books. I like to talk about action movies. I like to talk about horror movies. I like to talk about video games. I like to talk about fantasy, and I like to talk about sci-fi, and I like to talk about black representation and queer representation. So if that's something that you are interested in, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment on this video. Hopefully you watch towards the end for the watch time. Watch, like, share, comment, interact on this video for the all gay rhythm. And that's whether it's your first time or you are a regular, because like I always say, YouTube likes the watch time. That's the most important thing for the app, so that helps boost the video. That's why I say watch. They also like the fact if you hit the like button, that means this particular video is something that's worth getting out there, so they push the video on other people's recommended feeds. That's why I say like, share, watch, like, share, comment, interact for the all gay rhythm, so I can grow the channel, I can grow my presence, and I can grow my brand so I can become a full-time content creator. So do yourself a favor, do your boy a favor, do that for me. If you also want to leave a super thanks in the chat, which is almost like a super chat for when you go live, you can also do that. It's not expected, but it's appreciated. But anyway, we're here to talk spoilers for episode 3 of Interview with the Vampire. I wanted to get this episode out last week because I saw the first 5 episodes, and so I tried to preempt it, but last week was New York Comic Con, so I was trying to get ready for New York Comic Con and all the things that I wanted to do, and so yeah, it got away from me. And then this week I was tired from New York Comic Con, so that's why this episode's coming out a little late. But yeah, anyway, let's talk about episode 3. Episode 3 of Interview with the Vampire. Synopsis is: Louis continues his life as a businessman of Storyville when an old friend comes to town. Louis' relationship with Lestat is tested. Louis' business intertwines with growing tensions in New Orleans, leading to a new chapter in Louis' vampire life. If you couldn't tell from the title, we're talking spoilers, and I like this episode. I love this episode. Episode 3, it might be my favorite episodes of the ones I've seen so far out of the 5. Because like I said, I've seen the first 5 episodes already. Thank you, AMC and AMC Plus. I don't know if it's hard because episodes 1, 2, and 3, I think are the strongest of the ones I've seen so far. Now, that's not to say episodes 4 and 5 aren't good. It's just 1, 2, and 3 are my favorite. And so with episode 3, you see Louis and Lestat, they're on a date. Lestat's talking about the Louisiana Purchase and the significance of the park that they're sitting in. And Louis is basically trying to talk to Lestat and try to negotiate with Lestat because he's not taking to the fact that he's a vampire. He's not taking to killing. So he's trying to negotiate and justify maybe killing the worst of humanity, because he still sees himself as a human. That's why he's still doing his business ventures in Storyville. That's why he's still keeping up appearances, even though Lestat is like, you don't need to do this. We don't need the money. Like, we can still live and be fine, and you could take yourself away from humanity, but Louis doesn't want to do that. And getting into a bit of morality that everybody is capable of both good and evil, he's like, it doesn't matter who you go to. You scratch the surface of the worst of us or the best of us, you're going to find both good and evil. So your plan of trying to take out the worst of us, it's not going to work. And it even shows when he finds a man as they're walking the streets. It says this guy's stealing from people and all that other stuff. Lestat takes him up on the offer. He unalives the man, or he doesn't unalive him. He breaks his neck while he's still alive, and he's like, drain him before he dies. And Louis still doesn't want to do it. He grabs a black cat and he eats the cat. And it's like, okay, so what was the point of all of this? And you can see Lestat is getting frustrated because he wants Louis to embrace his vampire nature. But for whatever reason, Louis isn't, because again, he still sees himself as human. And even despite all of that, despite the frustrations, you could, like, the chemistry between these two, like, I could just watch these two on screen, just having a conversation for an entire episode, and I would love every single moment. Like, Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson, man, they need to get Emmys for these roles. Because, like, even despite being frustrated, you still see the level of love that Lestat has for Louis. He even says in this episode towards the middle or end, where he's like, I would do anything for Louis. And even to the point where you get to the next scene where they jump to the party, and it appears as if Lestat is being an asshole, he's being a brat, but everything that he did was coordinated, everything that he did was planned, because he knew that his top pianist, his top musician, was about to leave Louis to go somewhere else. I believe he said he was going to go to Atlanta, and Lestat doing what he did at the party prevented that, because he knows how important, despite him saying he doesn't need to, he knows how important the Fair Play Saloon is to Louis. And speaking of that, this episode does do another homage and reference to the original books with the Interview with the Vampire book and the Vampire Lestat, because Daniel Malloy, and I used to say David, I don't know why I kept saying David, but it's actually Daniel Malloy. He calls Louis out. He's like, what's with all these different stories? Because if you remember from episode 1, there was an interview that took place in the 70s, which is a reference to the book, because the book came out in the 70s. And he's like, why am I getting two different stories? Because in that first interview, you're talking about how Lestat was this terrible person and how you hated him and you didn't understand why you were so drawn to him, yada, yada. But now in this new incarnation, you're giving all this nuance and talking about how you're in love with him and how you're soulmates and everything. Like, why is there such inconsistencies in your story? And that is a reference to the books, in the sense of, like, in the Interview with the Vampires books, it was told through Louis' perspective, but then in the Vampire Lestat books, Lestat, the character, was given a lot more nuance, whereas opposed to Interview with the Vampire, he was seen strictly as a villain. And it's like, well, actually, this is the real story of who I am and who Lestat is as a person. So that's kind of a reference to the book, whereas the Vampire Lestat had more nuance. And he even says, like, me giving this second interview is the more nuanced version. And they also talk about the what did they say? Something about recollection, the conundrum of recollection or something like that. And it also is true in real life. Like, you may have memories of something at one point of your life, but then as you grow, as you mature, as you gain more experience, you see that same experience that you may have had through different eyes. And so you're able to give it a different perspective, a much better perspective. And that's essentially what Louis references. He's like, back then, even though it was the 70s, he was still 100. He was still, like, by that point, like, maybe 50 years old, but now he's like over 100 years old. So he's like, yeah, I was younger, I was angry, but now I'm giving it more nuance. And that's something that we can relate to as human beings. So, like, maybe when you're younger as a kid, you're upset with your mother or father because you're like, oh, you wanted this brand new toy and they simply said no. And you're like, oh, my parents hate me, they didn't want to get it to me. But then as you get older, you understand that maybe they said no because maybe they couldn't afford that toy. Maybe they didn't have the money for that toy. But you as a kid don't understand your parents can't afford something or whatever. You're just thinking, oh, your parents, they can get you whatever they want. They got money. They got money to burn. You don't understand money and the importance of money. You just think they have it. But obviously, as you get older, you understand the nuances and you understand more maybe what your parents might have been going through. And I feel like that's the same thing with Louis and Lestat. As Louis gotten older, he's understanding the relationship and the dynamic between him and Lestat more. And so that's why you're getting a different interview, which I love, because like I said in my first review for episode 1, the books were very subtexty in their gayness, but this series is all text, and I love it because I was saying for the longest time, like, I wanted this show to be hella gay, and it is hella gay. And then also not even just that, but just the fact of making Louis black is creating an entirely different dynamic and crafting a different storyline with the source material, but still at the same time keeping the source material very well alive and still making it Interview with the Vampire, just through a different lens. And I would argue a better lens. So there you go, Hollywood. Throw some blackness into your property it's gonna be better for it with black people behind the scenes as well, of course. But man, every time they jump to Jacob Anderson's Louis in the present, like I need to put a towel under myself because I'm constantly leaking, because that man, oh my God, that man is so fine. And just like the suaveness and silky smooth voice that he's putting on and his American Creole accent, I'm just thinking about it right now and I'm just like, oh man, I'm gonna need some water because the thirst is real. But also, how powerful are vampires in this world? You see Louis, he has pyrokinesis when he set the tapes on fire. You saw Lestat slowing down and basically stopping time. They can read minds. Of course, they got super speed and super strength. And what other powers do they have? And now you got a little problem in the home because obviously Lestat is bi. He even said like he doesn't discriminate. But then also on top of that, because now Louis has stopped killing humans and now he's killing animals, which, and we seen him eating rats, and rats don't have that much blood, so it's also not enough to fully quench Louis. So he mentioned like his libido is very low, so Louis and Lestat haven't been having sex, and with Lestat also being bi, he's indulging in some female pleasures. And you can see it on Louis' face that he's jealous. And he even mentions, and I was like, oh, this is so cute. I love this. It's so gay. After a moment where they interact at the incinerator, and Louis says to Lestat, am I not enough? And Lestat, he wants to have an open marriage because they're technically married, basically, but he wants to have an open marriage. He's like, look, I like to indulge, but at the end of the day, I'm coming home to you every night. And then plus, like, Louis literally mentioned, like, he hasn't been putting out, and Lestat's like, I got my needs. Now, I'm not endorsing it, but I can understand both sides. But Lestat is like, I mean, if you want to mess around with other people, you can. I'm not going to stop you. Like, do what you want. So long as you come home to me, you're good. And so Louis was like, taking a line from Buffy, I'd like to test that theory. And so he started messing around with an old, like I mentioned in the synopsis, an old childhood friend. And obviously, you can't be gay in the 1910s, especially a gay Negro man. And so they went off and snuck out in the woods and started messing around, and the guy went down on him, which goes to show that even still as a vampire, they can still get erections, which was a big question regarding the new series, because in Anne Rice's original books, vampires cannot get erections because her reasoning for that is their blood doesn't flow. And I always found that weird and a little bit naive. Maybe not naive is the right word, but I still found it a little weird to try to inject science in creatures that are magical, to be like, oh, well, they're dead, so of course their blood isn't flowing. Well, yeah, they're dead, but they're still walking around and talking, and then also on top of that, you're drinking blood. Blood is going straight to your stomach acids. That's not going through your system to keep your whatever beating, so like, it's magic. So let them get hard, let them get erections, let them be gay, let them fuck. And so that was a comment that I got when I was talking about episodes 1 and 2, where I was just like, damn, I wanted to see a sex scene between Louis and Lestat. And somebody was like, well, vampires don't have sex, so Lestat probably didn't have sex with Louis. But this basically confirms that, no, they still can have sex. And Louis even said, like, my libido was down. So basically implying that Lestat and him haven't had sex in a while because of his new diet. But this is basically full confirmation that they can still gain erections as vampires. So I want to see a sex scene. And people hear me say that, and it's not even like for the sake of like my unquenchable thirst. It's not even about being thirsty, but on a serious note, it's just about, because I always talk about how representation equals normalization. And in shows like this, they are constantly shown, because I can guarantee you if this was a heterosexual couple, they would be showing sex scenes between Louis and Lestat if they were a man and a woman. Or even if they were two women, because the idea of two women is fetishized in heterosexual communities. They would show a sex scene. And so just in the idea of having things be normalized, queer relationships, especially between men, be normalized, there should be sex scenes in this show between the two men. But anyway, Lestat's jealous. Thankfully, he doesn't kill the black man, because I'm like, you know, racism. But also something that makes the show more interesting. They still do not continue or they don't just address Louis' blackness in like the first episode and then they ignore it the rest of the no, it continues to be a continuing thread because he is still black in Jim Crow 1910. Now he does have a little bit of a luxury living in Storyville, but at the end of the day, Storyville is just a one section in New Orleans, and it's even showing that all these white people that are in his circle, people that he helped hire, people that he paid, they're still white at the end of the day, and they're conspiring more or less against him because they think, I think one of the aldermans, I don't remember if it was this episode, but I remember him saying a line that you're climbing ladder too high, Mr. Delac. And they're a little jealous because he is outpacing all the white business owners in Storyville. So they're trying to take Louis down. They're trying to take this nigger down. And so they signed a new law, especially now that Woodrow Wilson is president. And we all know the history of Woodrow Wilson with the birth of a nation and all that stuff. If you don't know about Woodrow Wilson, definitely look that up. And so they signed the new ordinance and law, segregation. And so it's messing up his business. And that pisses Louis off, especially with his new diet and all that. So he finally embraces his vampire nature and ends up unaliving the alderman, which goes to the beginning of what Louis or Lestat mentioned, that everybody's capable of good and evil, or even something like a reference to the Joker. One bad day will turn you into me. He had one bad day and he ended up unaliving, and he enjoyed it. And he couldn't realize, or he was so surprised by how much he enjoyed it or the level of torture that he did. He tried to blame Lestat for it. He was like, maybe you knew about it, just didn't say nothing. It's like, no, you enjoyed it. Just admit it. But speaking of admitting things, he kind of more or less showed his family that he's not all human after all, because he hasn't been coming around. He only comes around at night. And then when his family, or particularly his mother, didn't try to invite him in the house, because mother always thought or suspected that her son was gay, or back then, I guess the word would be queer. So she always had apprehensions about him, but at the end of the day, she's living in his house. It's his money. It's his estate. But they didn't want to have him in the house. So he started getting angry, and he used his vampire strength accidentally and kicked the door down. And that scared his entire family, including his sister, who he came to see. But again, I'm glad they're not ignoring Louis' family, Louis' blackness, his heritage, who he is. And so with that, you're seeing the rage of a black man that has literal powers in 1910. And so when everything was happening with his business, he became upset. He became enraged. And so he took out his issues on the community. What did he do? He put up a sign for his town that said, "No whites, coloreds only," which is a flip on white people having signs up that says no coloreds allowed, or whites only water fountain. And of course, white people think they could do things. It's like a meme or sound that's on TikTok. It's okay when you do it. It's a problem when I do it. That's basically white people's entire history. They don't have a problem with being racist and clans and yada yada, or saying no colors allowed, or putting up profiles on Grindr that says no blacks, no femmes, no Asians. But if you put up a sign or say something, they're like, oh, what if I do that? Whatever. So the white community got upset, and they started hitting Louis with violations. They started vandalizing his property. They even firebombed it, which caused a lot of Storyville to catch on fire. A lot of the business, because Louis owned most of the businesses in Storyville, which made him feel guilty about it. And Louis did say like he did it for his people. And this is why I constantly say, if black people had powers, way more of us would be like a Magneto than we would be a Charles Xavier, myself included. We would be seen as villains to most of society, to a certain segment of society, but we actually wouldn't be. So it's like, yeah, what Louis did was for him. It was selfish, and it wasn't really for his people, but at the end of the day, it was for his people. But yeah, so that's when the episode ends when we finally get the introduction of Claudia, because she was one of the victims that was caught in the firebombing of Storyville. And the episode ends with Louis saving Claudia. And then we're going to pick up with next week, episode 4, where we get to see the introduction of Claudia. But not going to get into that because this is a review for episode 3. But I will be recording episode 4. Hopefully that I will have that out when episode 4 drops, because like I said, I saw the first 5 episodes, so I already know. But again, like I said, first 3 episodes are the strongest to me of the season. And I love this episode. I love this show. I love the dynamic between Louis and Lestat. I love the chemistry between Louis and Lestat. I want to see more just Louis and Lestat just having conversations because I just love these two actors. Lestat, the French accent, like everything about them. I'm here for this show. I'm obsessed with this show. I'm living this show. Like, I'm excited. Like, even though I'm like, I need episode 6, I need episode 7, I need episode 8. I think there's only 8 episodes this season. And then I need season 2. But yeah, what do you guys think about these first 3 episodes of Interview with the Vampire? What episode do you think is your favorite so far? Tell me any predictions, all that stuff. Like I said, watch, like, share, comment, interact on this video for the all gay rhythm. If this is one of your first time checking out one of my videos, please check out the other videos on my channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe for more and hit that bell notification button so you're alerted every single time I post a new video. And tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.